Thank you, Mr. President. Brazil welcomes the report of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights and fundamental freedoms of indigenous peoples, Mr. James Anaya, on his visit to Brazil from 14 to 25 August 2008. Our approach is based on the spirit of dialogue and cooperation that underlines Brazil's relationship with the United Nations human rights system and our standing invitation to UN special procedures. In his visit to Brazil, the government provided broad, extensive, and direct contact with various aspects of Brazilian indigenous reality. The Special Rapporteur's visit included meetings with high-ranking federal officials, as well as field visits. The Special Rapporteur had the opportunity to clarify questions in an open and cooperative spirit regarding any issues related to the activities of the respective agencies. He was assured direct and unimpeded access to all communities. The decision of the Federal Supreme Court on 19 March 2009 concerning the Raposa Serra do Sol indigenous territory marked a historic victory for the indigenous movement and the Brazilian state in their committed effort to protect the rights of indigenous peoples as provided for in the Constitution and international instruments. The actions of the state and application of the law based on the High Court's rulings, notwithstanding the forces arrayed against the continuous demarcation of the Raposa Serra do Sol indigenous territory, strengthens the legal status of every order indigenous territory recognized by the Brazilian state, discouraging land invasions and legal challenges. The withdrawal of the area was accomplished in a peaceful and negotiated way. The Raposa Serra do Sol territory of 1.74 million hectares remains intact. In their deliberations to ensure the prevention of Brazilian national sovereignty over the demarcated land, a total of 19 qualifications were established by the Supreme Court, but they do not replace the existing legislation on indigenous matters, nor will they be incorporated to the new Indigenous Peoples Statute. Although the sole property of the Union, the possession and use of indigenous lands is reserved on a permanent, exclusive, and indivisible basis to the indigenous peoples occupying those lands. Indigenous lands may not be freely transferred by indigenous peoples or the Union and are, in this way, linked permanently to the guaranteed cultural and material reproduction of native peoples. According to the National Indigenous Foundation, FUNAI, there are 611 indigenous lands at different stages of registration processes. As mentioned by the Special Rapporteur, Brazil developed an advanced methodology to demarcate and register indigenous lands with full participation of indigenous peoples in all stages of the process. The duty to consult indigenous peoples on matters affecting their rights as a distinct ethnic group has been clearly incorporated in Brazilian legislation, in particularly following enactment of ILO Convention 169. With regard to the possible impacts stemming from mining activities on indigenous lands and hydroelectric generation, the law requires consultation by FUNAI. Despite its non-binding nature, FUNAI has pursued efforts through the participation of indigenous peoples in environmental licensing processes. Many projects have been the object of full consultation within the indigenous communities. The projects executed under the Accelerated Growth Program, Programa de Aceleração do Crescimento, PAC, for instance, have been subject to prior consultation. In fact, some of these projects were even rejected in an initial sentence, decisions that transcend the guarantees established in ILO Convention 169. Mr. President, surveys conducted by FUNAI since 2006 identify 64 isolated indigenous groups and 6 others were only recently contacted. Brazil has pursued specific public policies over the past 20 years aimed at isolated indigenous groups, and we are fully engaged at our national, regional, and international levels regarding this issue. On health matters, given the importance of nutritional well-being as a determining factor of overall health conditions, we are dedicated to the issue and in monitoring indigenous communities. We remain firmly committed to tackle the challenge of poverty and the right to food. The Bolsa Família Estipend and Carteira Indígena projects are also dedicated to the indigenous peoples. Nearly 56,000 indigenous families are covered by these programs. On the situation in Mato Grosso do Sul, the demarcation of Guarani, Kaiowá, and Uanenda indigenous lands in small islands of the territory, some of which date to the 1920s, was detrimental to indigenous peoples. The federal government has this issue among its main priorities. Mr. President, we have concrete examples on advancement and still great challenges to overcome. We firmly believe that the continued dialogue with the Special Rapporteur will enable Brazil to further develop its policies to fully guarantee the rights of indigenous peoples in the country. We remain open for a fruitful exchange of views and experience on this matter. I thank you very much.